It was Friday, April 17, 1987. The sun had already descended over the western sky of St. Andrew, Jamaica, and the dark of a cold, moonless night gripped the island. 36 years old Carlton Barrett, famous drummer whose beats can be heard in hits by Bob Marley and the Wailers, was heading home along Bridgemount Avenue. As the famous drummer moves along towards Lot 12 on the avenue, this night was meant to be like no other. A conspiracy was in progress. His haters had already planned his demise. A gun was already loaded, and the hitman, an evil figure masked in the darkness, awaited his approach. Completely unaware of the danger, Carlton Barrett stepped towards the gate of 12 Bridgemount Avenue. Suddenly, the hitman emerged from the shadow of darkness. His sudden steps disrupted the silence and dragged Carlton Barrett's attention towards him. No explanation needed. It was clear to Barrett that this man came to. The merciless hitman swung his hand towards the frightened drummer, his finger pressed against the trigger. The slim body of the famous drummer was perforated by bullets. As he lay dying in front of his gate, the sound of his killer's feet could be heard hastening away in the dark. Lying in his own blood on the ground, the drummer felt his last breath coming. And his hands, those talented hands that beat rhythms of the drum to many across the world, lost all strength to move. Those hands caved into the arms of death with the final breath. It was the end of an era. In this video, I look at the death registration form of Carlton Barrett to see the cause of his death and to remember this talented drummer the world lost so tragically. I am Nigel D. Salmon. Welcome to Jamaican Chapter. This is the death registration form for Carlton Barrett. I will be looking through this death registration form and will speak on his cause of death, as well as to look at his basic information. I will start on the form by looking at the top of the form. And at the top of the form, we'll see where it says death registration form, death in the district of, and they wrote May Brown's Corner, parish St. Andrew. Below that we see place of death, and they wrote 12 Bridgemount Avenue. So Carlton Barrett died at 12 Bridgemount Avenue. On the right side of the form, we'll see usual residence of deceased, and they wrote 12 Bridgemount Avenue, Kingston 8, St. Andrew. I'll go back to the left of the form, and I will start at the left of the form where we'll look at his basic information before going into his cause of death. So here on the left of the form it says particulars of deceased. Date of death 17th April 1987. In other words, April 17th, April 17, 1987. So Carlton Barrett died on April 17th, 1987. Below that we see full name, and they wrote Carlton Barrett. Yes, so we all know that was his full name. Below that you see sex, and they wrote male. So yes, we all know he was male. Beside that you see condition, and they wrote married. Now, condition points to marital status. So the condition is saying marital status, and they wrote married. So yes, Carlton Barrett was married at the time of his death. We'll continue down to age, and here we see 35. So yes, he was 30. Well, there are, if you go on Wikipedia and other sources, they say 36. But here on his death registration form, we see age as 35. And I'm quoting from the death registration form, where his age is listed as 35. Below that we see occupation or calling, and they wrote musician. So yes, he was a musician, and he was also a songwriter. That's what I learned from another source. So Carlton Barrett was specifically, he was a drummer. A drummer, of course, creates music with the drums. Barrett developed his passion for the drums from he was a boy in Kingston. In the 1960s, he and his brother Ashton Barrett performed in several bands as musicians. Ashton Barrett on guitar and Carlton Barrett on drums. The first band that the brothers performed in was called the Soul Mates. The second band was called the Rhythm Force. And later they performed in a band called the Hippie Boys. In 1969, Carlton Barrett and his brother joined the Wailers. And this decision was what brought Carlton Barrett his fame. Because the Wailers was bigger than all the other bands that they performed in. The Wailers, of course, was later known as Bob Marley and the Wailers. Carlton Barrett did not perform exclusively for the Wailers. No, he provided his services in many recording sessions and live performances of other artists. So he was not tied down to any specific band. You know, he was a drummer that was in demand. He is credited for popularizing the one drop sound with the drums, and many of the songs that you hear today from Bob Marley and the Wailers, from Peter Tosh and other artists, those drums you hear in the background, that's Carlton Barrett. Many famous songs he played on locally, and his talent took him overseas. He was a hard worker. He was dedicated to the drums from he was a boy. In fact, it is said that while he was a boy, that he made his first drums out of cans. He saw the drums as his career. And he played well, and from all sources, he was paid well. So, Carlton Barrett was one of Jamaica's best musicians, one of the best drummers around during his lifetime. All right, let's continue. Below occupation and calling, we see birthplace. And they wrote St. Andrew. You will notice that people use St. Andrew and Kingston interchangeably. You know, there are places that are called there are places that are called Kingston when it's actually St. Andrew, and there are places that are called St. Andrew that are actually Kingston. So here you'll see his birthplace as St. Andrew, and in other sources you see Kingston. So he was born, and we are working with the death registration form. He was born in St. Andrew. We'll now go over to the right side of the death registration form and to see the cause of his death. So here over on the right side of the form, we have only one line. that describes his cause of death. It says, cause of death, immediate cause, and they wrote multiple gunshot wounds. Not one, multiple gunshot wounds. It is very clear that the individual who pulled the trigger repeatedly wanted Carlton Barrett dead. 3 to 4 years after the murder, Carlton Barrett's own widow, Albertine Barrett, was charged and sentenced in October 1991 after being convicted of conspiracy to murder. Albertine Barrett was the same person who signed this death registration form. She was the same one who signed this death registration form when nobody knew, when nobody had her as a suspect in the death of her husband. If you look at the bottom, I'm going to look at the bottom here of the form. Here, in this section where it says informant. Now, the informant is the person who provides information about the deceased, like where was their usual address, were they married, their age, their birthplace, things like that. So, here in this section, it says informant, name and surname, Albertine Barrett. Qualification, widow. Wife was put there first, then it was crossed out and they put widow. Correctly put widow. And on the right side is the residence, that's the residence of the informant, and they wrote 12 Bridgemount Avenue, Kingston 8, St. Andrew. And at the bottom here, she signed her name, Albertine Barrett. So she was the one who provided the information needed in filling out this form. But not too long after, in October 1991, she was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder. And provided that she was really guilty, she was playing the role of a grieving widow. But was she? Was Albertine Barrett really a grieving widow or just a cold-blooded murderer? So, police investigation led to her being involved in the murder of her husband. She was sentenced along with 39 years old Glenroy Carter, a taxi driver she was having sex with while being married to Carlton Barrett. Sentenced also was a 39 years old Mason named Junior Neal, also called Bang. The prosecution believed that Bang was the hitman, the one who pulled the trigger on the famous drummer. You believe that? Albertine Barrett, who signed this death registration form, playing grieving widow, was in 1991 sentenced to prison as part of the conspiracy to murder her husband. And along with her was the man she was having sex with behind her husband's back. So, what was the motive? According to the prosecution, Albertine Barrett convinced her bonnerman, that is Glenroy Carter, that Carlton Barrett, her husband, was abusive to her. So Glenroy Carter, probably under her influence, of course, decided with her to hire a hitman to kill Carlton Barrett. And who was that hitman? Junior Neal, also called Bang. So Bang was hired to do the banging. I hope you're getting me. Let me say that again. Carlton Barrett was shot dead on the 17th of April, 1987. In 1991, his widow, Albertine Barrett, along with the man she was having sex with behind her husband, and the man that the both of them hired to kill Barrett, all three of them were convicted and sentenced to prison. The bonnerman, the cheating wife, now widow, and the hitman were dragged off to prison. But the three of them did not accept their sentences. No, they did not. Through their lawyers, they appealed their convictions, and the appeal was successful. In 1994, all the three of them, the cheating wife, the bonnerman, and the alleged hitman, all three of them were found not guilty in a new trial and were acquitted. After all of that, we now have Carlton Barrett's murder case as one of the many unsolved murder cases on this island. Now we're back asking the question, who killed the drummer Carlton Barrett? It's an open question, and we may never know. Thanks for watching, and remember to like, comment, especially in this video. I want to hear your comment, and remember to subscribe for more interesting videos